Now, it must have seemed like a bright idea at the time. In the aftermath of budget rows over the granny tax and the 50p tax, Number 10 tried to get the show back on the road with a new policy to ban cheap alcohol. But Channel 4 News can reveal that just days before the Prime Minister announced he wanted to introduce a minimum price per unit, he'd received a written warning from one of his own ministers that he could well be breaking the law. I've been to Leeds to talk to a supermarket which says if it comes to the crunch, it'll see the government in court. Cheap booze deals like this are 2 a penny. But if the Prime Minister gets his way, they'll soon be a thing of the past. He's vowed to make alcohol more expensive, and here's why. Cut-price drink is, he says, causing mayhem on our streets and chaos in our hospitals. Channel 4 News has learnt that he defied a written warning from a member of his own government when he made this promise to introduce a minimum price per unit.
I think this minimum unit pricing is a big part of the answer. It's mad when you can buy cans of lager for 25p or 2 litres of cider for less than £2, so we need to deal with that.
Well, there was a furious reaction from the drinks industry and from stores like this one, Morrison's. They argued that responsible drinkers were being punished and that the whole thing could be illegal because it would fall foul of EU competition rules. But what I've found out is that just 4 days before David Cameron made the announcement, one of his very own ministers warned him and his deputy they risked breaking the law. In the letter seen by this programme, the Business Minister David Willetts said,
"The Department for Business, Innovation and Skills thinks minimum unit pricing is very likely to be deemed illegal under EU competition and trade law. I note that the Attorney-General has written saying that whilst minimum unit pricing may not necessarily be illegal, it carries a significant degree of legal risk, and that any litigation related to minimum unit pricing would be complex and costly."
The industry told us the letter was astonishing and made a legal challenge more likely.
1 week before they make an announcement in support of minimum pricing, they have their own government department, their own legal advisors, telling them that in all likelihood this measure is illegal. It does sound extraordinary, and frankly, it only strengthens our belief that a legal challenge in relation to minimum pricing is likely to be successful.
Attempts to introduce a minimum price for tobacco have already been rejected by the European Court of Justice because it would unfairly distort competition. But whatever the legal niceties, the letter also raises another objection, that setting a minimum price wouldn't actually change most people's drinking habits. The government's proposing making supermarkets charge 40p for each unit of alcohol. So take this deal of 2 crates of cider for £15. You'd end up paying another £4. But research quoted by the letter suggests most shoppers would rather pay more rather than drink less. You'd be poorer, but no healthier. The letter quotes Home Office estimates that setting a minimum price would reduce alcohol consumption by just 2.9% in the first year. It adds that work by the Cabinet Office Behavioural Insights team suggests that
problem drinkers, by dint of their alcohol dependency, will most likely continue to drink at their usual levels, often foregoing other spending choices to do so.
One supermarket accused the government of levying yet another tax on families.
We view minimum unit pricing effectively as a tax on customers, particularly those who drink moderately. And one of the questions the government has not answered is why, if you do drink within government-recommended health guidelines, should you now be required to pay more just to look after the health effects on a few people who misuse alcohol?
But with alcohol contributing to 1 million crimes and more than 1 million hospital admissions each year, health campaigners argue the government has to take action.
There's very strong research evidence to show that this will have a major impact on people's health. Once it's been in place for a few years, then the reckoning is that it could save 3,000 lives a year. Now, why wouldn't we do that?
Even David Cameron's own health secretary privately admits he isn't persuaded. So now the Prime Minister is presiding over a policy which doesn't have the support of his own ministers. A policy announced in haste in the aftermath of a messy budget, and one Mr Cameron may end up repenting at leisure.